There's a sound that can instantly transport millions of Brits back to their childhood. The shrill ring of the school bell signalling lunchtime. That wasn't just a bell, it was the starting pistol for the Great Migration. A chaotic stampede of small socked feet and rumbling stomachs, all heading for one place, the Great Dining Hall, known more affectionately as the canteen. That place had its own unique smell, didn't it? An unmistakable blend of over-boiled potatoes, floor disinfectant, and a faint glimmer of hope that today's pudding would be a good one. It was a loud, cavernous space, echoing with the clatter of cutlery on trays and the chatter and shouts of hundreds of children. The long formica tables, the cold metal chairs bolted to the floor, it was all part of the scene. And standing guard at the gates of this culinary paradise were the legendary figures, the women in striped aprons and hairnets who held your lunchtime destiny in the palms of their hands. The dinner ladies. They were the guardians of the gravy. With one hand, they could scoop a spoonful of mash with the precision of a surgeon, and with the other, they could point to the back of the queue and quell a minor riot with a single razor-sharp glare. They knew who the fussy-eaters were, who would try to hide their cabbage under their potatoes, and who truly deserved that little extra bit of custard. They were both feared and respected. And then you received your tools, a plastic tray, usually in a fetching shade of beige, brown or green, with separate compartments that the food always managed to spill into. A set of impossibly lightweight metal cutlery that felt like it could be bent by an undercooked carrot, and a plastic beaker which often had its own indescribable signature scent, ready for whatever liquid was on offer that day. As you stood there, tray in hand, shuffling slowly forward in the queue, you'd look up at the chalk-written menu board, squinting to read it and wondering what fate awaited you. Would lunch today be a glorious victory or another test of endurance? So, what was it to be? The main course at a 1970s school dinner was a game of chance, a daily lottery of textures and vague brownish colours. The undisputed star of this lottery, the workhorse of the school kitchen, was a substance known simply as mince. This was truly a versatile ingredient. On a Monday, this mince might find itself in a shepherd's pie, buried under a crust of lumpy, sometimes greyish mash. By Wednesday, it could be miraculously reborn as a British-style lasagna, which meant very little cheese and an ocean of bechamel sauce. And on Friday, it might appear in a pie, hidden beneath a sadly soggy pastry lid. It was the great chameleon of the canteen. And what would a main course be without its supporting cast? Let's talk about vegetables, a true test of a child's character. Cabbage was boiled to submission until it had lost all colour and willpower. Carrots were soft, mushy coins that offered no resistance whatsoever. And the peas were often wrinkled and a sad shade of khaki. It was a commendable effort to get us our 5 a day, but it was also an early lesson in culinary endurance.
However, amongst these culinary mysteries, there were days of glorious sunshine, the good days. A slice of roast chicken, even if it was a little dry, felt like a banquet. Sausages with a scoop of mash and a ladle of onion gravy were a triumph. And then there was the undisputed king of Friday lunchtimes, fish and chips. A piece of crispy battered fish, hot and greasy in the best possible way. On those days, the cheers in the dining hall always seemed a little bit louder. But no matter what the main course was, whether it was a triumph or a tragedy, we all knew it was just the opening act. The main event, the real reason we endured the cabbage, was the pudding. Pudding. This was the reward. This was the star of the show. No matter how challenging the main course had been, the promise of pudding was the light at the end of the tunnel. The mood in the canteen always seemed to lift when the pudding trolley was wheeled out. The cornerstones of the school dessert menu were the hot, stodgy puddings. These weren't delicate, elegant creations. They were designed to be heavy, comforting, and to fill you up for the rest of the school day. There was the legendary jam roly-poly, a suet pudding swirled with a bright red line of jam, resembling a delicious edible carpet. There was spotted dick, a steamed suet pudding dotted with raisins that was responsible for endless playground jokes. And of course, the glorious treacle sponge, a light sponge cake absolutely drowned in a dark, sweet treacle sauce. But a school pudding was nothing without its life partner, its soulmate, the one thing that elevated it from a mere dessert to a cultural icon: custard. This wasn't the thin, creamy sauce you might know today. This was proper, thick, yellow, often lumpy school custard, served from a giant metal jug. It was a substance of immense power. But even the standard yellow custard paled in comparison to the true legend, the mystery that still baffles a nation. We're talking, of course, about pink custard. It was unnaturally, vibrantly pink, and it raises the great unanswered question of British nostalgia. What flavour was it exactly? Strawberry? Raspberry? Or was the flavour just pink? And it wasn't always hot puddings. On special days, you might get a slice of Arctic roll, a simple but perfect roll of vanilla ice cream wrapped in a thin layer of sponge. Or the ultimate party food, a wobbly, brightly coloured cube of jelly, served with a single, sad-looking scoop of vanilla ice cream. It was simple, it was sweet, and we loved it. So with the sweet, stodgy pudding finally eaten, what did we have to wash it all down with? The drinks menu at a school canteen was, shall we say, limited. Water wasn't just served, it was dispensed. It came from a large communal metal jug, often with a few mysterious bits floating in it, and was poured into those signature plastic beakers. It always had a slightly metallic taste. Then, of course, there was the milk. For many, this was a daily ritual, a small third of a pint glass bottle with a foil top that you'd satisfyingly pierce with your thumb. The only catch, by the time you drank it, it had usually been sitting out for a few hours, meaning it was almost always lukewarm. But the school dinner experience was about more than just the food and drink. It was a daily lesson in social survival governed by a set of strict, unspoken rules.
Rule number 1. The Clean Plate Club. You were expected to eat everything. The watchful eyes of the dinner ladies missed nothing. Wasting food was the ultimate sin, and many of us learned to eat our greens through sheer force of will, lest we be judged. Rule number 2. Noise control. The canteen was a symphony of chaos, a constant low roar of chatter. But that roar could be silenced in an instant by a single sharp cry of "Quiet!" from a dinner lady on patrol. Rule number 3. Canteen currency. The official currency may have been pounds and pence, but inside the dining hall, the currency was food. A single traded roast potato could be traded for an entire serving of unwanted cabbage. A biscuit from your packed lunch could be exchanged for a slice of Arctic roll. These were high-stakes negotiations. And finally, there was the ritual of returning your tray, scraping your leftovers into a giant bin under the stern gaze of a supervisor. It was the final judgment. Had you eaten well? Had you followed the rules? Only then were you released back into the wild chaos of the playground. But of course, not everyone embarked on this daily culinary adventure. In the great dining hall, there was another tribe, a separate faction who operated by their own rules, the packed lunch kids. They were an island of calm in the chaotic sea of the canteen. While we were queuing up for our mystery mince, they would calmly retrieve their lunchboxes, often a Tupperware container or a box with a picture of their favourite cartoon character on it. Opening one of those boxes released a completely different smell into the air, a smell of home. The packed lunch menu had its own predictable, comforting rhythm. The centerpiece was almost always a sandwich, wrapped neatly in cling film or greaseproof paper. The fillings weren't exotic. It was usually cheese, ham, or jam. Simple, safe, and reliable. Accompanying the sandwich would be a bag of crisps, perhaps Smith's crisps, with that iconic little blue bag of salt inside that you'd sprinkle on yourself. And for dessert, no studgy puddings for them. They had the treasures of the Tup shop. A penguin biscuit with its famously terrible jokes on the wrapper, or a mighty wagon wheel, a circle of chocolate and marshmallow that seemed impossibly large in a child's hands. A piece of fruit, often a slightly bruised apple, was usually thrown in by their mum to ease any guilt. This created a fascinating social dynamic. A silent, unspoken rivalry existed between the two groups. We, the school dinner kids, would look on with envy at their crisps and chocolate biscuits, but they, in turn, would often cast a longing glance at our hot, steaming plates of jam roly-poly covered in custard.
This envy often led to a secret underground economy. A black market of food trading would emerge in the corners of the playground. A prized wagon wheel could be exchanged for a portion of hot pudding. A bag of cheese and onion crisps might be swapped for a couple of roast potatoes. These were complex negotiations, a child's first lesson in supply and demand. The packed lunch wasn't just a meal, it was a statement, a different way of life within the school walls. But there was another drink, a ghost at the feast, that defined an even earlier era of school life. And its story is the story of a changing Britain, the free school milk. For decades, a small, 1/3 of a pint glass bottle of milk wasn't just a drink, it was a daily right for every primary school child. It was a legacy of post-war Britain, a national health initiative designed to build strong bones and healthy children in the wake of rationing. The ritual was universal, the satisfying pop as you pierced the foil top with your thumb, the slightly warm temperature of the milk by the time it reached you, the distinct taste of it. It was simply a fact of life. Until suddenly, for many, it wasn't. In 1971, the Education Secretary at the time, a formidable politician named Margaret Thatcher, made a deeply controversial decision. To save money, she abolished the universal free school milk programme for children aged 7 to 11. The public outcry was enormous. It was one of the first times a major political decision was felt directly in the school playground. It wasn't just about milk, it was about a principle. And in the process, Margaret Thatcher earned herself a nickname that would follow her for her entire political career. Thatcher, the Milk Snatcher.
This single act turned a simple daily drink into a powerful piece of social history, a shared, slightly bitter memory that became woven into the fabric of growing up in Britain. It was a sign that the old ways were changing, and even something as simple as a bottle of milk could become a political battleground. And so we were released, full of stodge and sugar, back into the wild chaos of the playground. Looking back, the British school dinner leaves a complicated legacy. Let's be honest, it wasn't fine dining, it was mass catering on a tight budget. The vegetables were often uninspiring, the mash was frequently lumpy, and the mince was always a mystery. But it was also so much more than that. It was a hot meal on a cold day. It was the fuel that got us through afternoon lessons. And most importantly, it was a shared experience that connected an entire generation. It shaped our palates, and it certainly shaped our national sense of humour. That particularly British ability to complain about something fondly. It taught us that food didn't have to be perfect to be memorable. It was a social institution, a daily ritual that was as much a part of growing up
as learning your times tables. So, now we turn to you. What was the single best or most terrifying thing you were ever served at school? What are your memories of that mysterious pink custard? Share your own school dinner stories in the comments below. After all, these shared memories, both the good and the bad, are the flavours we never truly forget.